So welcome to the second of our series of lectures, and like before, let us recite the mantra of the universe in its purity 7 times before we proceed to our subject. Chant, please. Om Nam, Om Nam, Om Nam, Om Nam, Om Nam, Om Nam, Om Nam. Thank you. So today we will be treating a very, very interesting subject, and that is society and karma. So, in other words, group karma. Last time we talked about individual karma, how the individual is made up of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind and various types of consciousness. And now we talk about society. Now, society and our human groups within society is a very interesting kind of a segmentation of humanity. Why? First of all, let's start with the biggest group we have, and that's 6.6 billion human beings. So 6.6 billion, I mean, it's an immense number. Okay? And throughout history, we could see that this group was divided into various subgroups. How did we do that? We based it on language, color, location, many, many factors. And we know, oh, the one, religion, I forgot. These were things that we actually used to identify ourselves and make a difference between us and them. And it's very interesting that we made a lot of wars based on them, because if you remember, our 7th consciousness, our discriminative consciousness, was too strong. We identified with these differences, and we wanted to kill those who were different, because we were afraid that if we don't do that, they will kill us. So based on this, we will have a dilemma of us and them. What's the way out? Otherwise, we cannot solve our group karma. So Korea is in a very kind of, how to say this? In a historical situation where you have to put it down moment to moment to moment, because there's so much of this past karma based on group differences that if you're attached to it, you cannot forward, you cannot advance. And that's true about other nations, even to Inuits up there, because everybody throughout human history got their share of conflicts through identifications, attachments, false views, etc. So this kind of really strong division between us and them is based on our favorite triplet of human suffering, which is anger, desire, ignorance. All this division comes from ignorance, anger, desire. Okay? So we speak different languages, our skin color is different, our location of living is different, our religion is different. We could list a lot more things. All of them are actually very good. When you go to a Thai restaurant, because you haven't eaten Thai food, it's tasty, it's curry, it's nice. But if you say that Korean food is the best, Thai food is no good, then soon there's some conflict between you and Thai people. So if we identify with the differences, then we have a problem. If we do not use the differences correctly, then we manufacture quite a lot of conflicts. And we believe that they exist by themselves. And that's wrong. And if you remember the 6 plus 2 consciousnesses that we used last time, then the one in the upper realm here has, like I said, 2. One is the manas, and the other is the alaya, the storehouse, and the controller, the differentiator, where you make your distinctions. Now, identification with this, with the 7th, brings the conflict of us and them. So how do we actually eliminate this? Because just talking about it is not really sufficient. And of course, any monk or nun or teacher would say, practice, practice, practice. Individually, we practice, but how do we use that practice correctly in our group, in our culture? Okay? So for that, we have to totally erase this and actually map out how a society is working. The way you look at it, independent of all these factors, you observe what kind of functionality there is in society. Okay? Even before I start this description, I have to say that it has been in existence for thousands of years, and it was also misused by people. So what I say here is not a guarantee, but a very good starting point. To observe society as it is, to make it very clear, your situation within that society, and to use your mind, use your emotions, use your distinctions very clearly in your group. So let us think together. What kind of really distinctive, clear functions there are in a given culture, in a given nation? Okay, so first, like I said, in the us or them, we have to defend ourselves. So in every single society you observe, there are soldiers. Okay? And I will use a few Sanskrit words here just to make it part of a larger system. Then we use other languages also. In Sanskrit, the warrior, the soldier group is called Kshatriya. The Buddha is from that group. In our world, also, the police belongs there because they use external power, like soldiers, to maintain law and order. So the significant characteristic of this group that they use external or physical power, weapons, applying laws, etc. Now, the question is, what is it that directs this external power? What is it that is supposed to control it? It's an internal power of what? Of our consciousness. And that is supposed to be higher than that. Now, anybody who works primarily with their consciousness, in Sanskrit is called a Brahmin. Okay? So, ideally, it's an internal power, and many jobs like doctors, artists, intellectuals like teachers, for instance, they use that. So doctor, teacher, lawyer, priest, they use that. Primarily you start with the consciousness. It gives you some internal power, some recognition, some clarity, some treatment, some legal advice. So compared to the warrior, the soldier, it's an internal power, some internal thing that you use. Sorry. Okay. Now, the pair here is really important, because for a very, very long time in human history, they were in control. And when it started to change, that was the time of the military juntas or dictatorships, where the warriors were telling intellectuals how to think. And we all know that. Even in this country, there was a president who just said, it's over. And of course, he was assassinated because Kshatriyas are assassinated, usually. If they take too much power, it becomes a dictatorship. They discard the advice of priests, doctors, teachers, etc., and then they die by their own sword. Okay? So, next, underneath, is what the Sanskrit system calls Vaishyas. They are the traders. Anything commercial. Anything financial. So by the end of the sentence, you already know what kind of power do they have. Because they are the distributors of material wealth, so they have material power. Okay? They have material power, but all this material power would be worthless without the work of another group in society who are actually the workers, and they are called Shudras. Industry, agriculture. So they are the doers, okay? So what kind of power do they have? Action power, because they do it, okay? Action power. Now, if you look at any kind of society on earth, this exists there. Whether it's in the Australian desert, even they are totally peaceful, but they have warriors against animals. They are the hunters, okay? And they have no money, but they also trade between each other with little, pieces of clamshells. Actually, the currency in Australia, in the Aboriginals, is clamshells. White, beautiful clamshells. So wherever you go, you see this. Now, in my country, for 42 years, the workers had an illusion that they could take this position. So simple workers of agriculture were made into ministers. And they said that they have the power. It's called proletariat or communism. Okay? And what did they do? They disabled trading. They took the financial power away. And they also tried to control, through part of the intellectuals, the army. That's why all communist states collapse financially and have to expand militarily, because they distort the Brahmins. In fact, they clip them or partly exterminate them, and they want to put them into power. They cannot do it. They just don't have the karma for it. Okay? And when the traders almost disappear, then society collapses, because there is no distribution of wealth, no matter how much they produce. And since the intellectual or internal power is missing, quality goes down. So they are responsible for quality. They are responsible for defense. They are responsible for distribution. And they are responsible for creation, material creation, because if you see how a gardener or a farmer grows plants, it's a miracle. I mean, they know the lunar calendar, they know when to sow, when to reap, how to preserve, etc. It's very important. Okay? So we don't play out all the possibilities, but if they are in harmony, then society is harmonious. If one of them gets too much power, then the others diminish. Bear that in mind, because when you want to fix your own group, your own small habitat, or your own country, thinking in terms of these is useful, because they pinpoint at the basic functions of any human group you can have. Now, this is pure and clear Hindu system, but they used it in a very exclusive sense. First of all, they believed that your karma is destiny. And that's why they didn't like the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, because he turned everything upside down compared to the Hindu view, and he said your karma is what you make by your body, speech and mind. So if you have Kshatriya action, warrior type of thinking, and warrior type of strong speech, if you do it for many, many decades, you may be reborn as a soldier. So soldier type of thinking, soldier type of speech, soldier type of action, you're reborn there. So the Buddha was like that. But the Buddha left it and even did not enter the Brahmin caste, okay? He went beyond that, okay? And if you ask very educated Hindus, mostly they are from Brahmin, origin, they say, I don't belong to any of them. They discard this. Why do they want to discard this? Because this was used for thousands of years to strictly discriminate between people. And certain jobs in the Shudra realm were not accepted as proper jobs, basically dealing with dead people, with garbage, with sick people also. So they were the outcasts or the untouchables, okay? So this system has an open end up and an open end down. The Buddha type of people, the Bodhisattvas, they go beyond this, and those who actually do not, fit into them, but they are in the view of society lower than they are in the so-called untouchable caste. They are also criminals, for instance. Criminals don't fit in here. And for that, if you are kind of content with this, we use another chart to show how actually the distinction within society in terms of values work. This is functional distinction, okay? And now we will go into an even simpler system which shows you the value, okay? The kind of quality-oriented distinction. And just while I'm wiping this clean, imagine that in India they still have more than 200 million people who are classified as untouchables. They live like that, okay? So, like before, we'll use a little bit of a Sanskrit origin. They were actually pretty much genius, for this. And introduce three concepts. One is the fire. It's called Rajas. Okay? The other is, it's called blackness or earth. It's called Tamas. And the upper one is called sattva or bodhisattva, which is air. Now, these four groups which I outlined before, they all belong to the fire, okay? Because they harmoniously mix their energy into various functions, and they all belong here, okay? So the Brahmin, the Kshatriya, Vaishya, very good, and Shudra. Okay? They're all in the realm of fire because they share the same kind of view, although this is very intellectual, you know, internal, external, financial, and physical creation. But in terms of anger, desire, and ignorance, they are roughly with the same worldview of self and other. That's why they can form a society. Now those who do not want this, they can go either up or they go down. They try to transcend society, they become sattvas or bodhisattvas, or they try to destroy society and they become the real outcasts, they are criminals. And it's very interesting. So bodhisattva, and this is the criminal. They don't want this. They don't believe in this either in terms of morality or ethics, which links all these together, because they share the same rules. It's called the law. And here above, a different law applies, of course, because they want to attain liberation. And these guys, the criminals, they lose their own freedom. It's totally reverse process. Okay, is it clear? Good. So there are places, various places, where these groups actually gather and practice. So where do bodhisattvas gather and practice? It's the temple or monastery. So when you don't want society, you go to monastery. And you get even more of it. So the place where they gather and they practice is monastery or forest, something which is out, but with their aspiration they go beyond. Okay? So this is the transcendental behavior, because you want to go beyond, and then by coming back you can help them. You can help them if you want to. That's the bodhisattva ideal. But if not, you just stay in the monastery or stay in the mountain, stay in the hermitage, and for you society is finished, and for society you are finished. You're gone. Okay? And there are various places where these groups function. Where do they gather? The Brahmins. Simple. Schools. Libraries. Okay? Universities. Okay? Politicians, parliaments. Okay? Where do the warriors, the Kshatriyas gather? Army base. Okay? It's the army. They form the army. We shouldn't forget one thing from the Brahmin category, because the artists are also there with their internal power of creativity and vision, and they have something which is really interesting: theater. Also, we should not forget about another group of Brahmins which are really important for our health. And where do they gather? Hospitals. So if you're a doctor, you are the host in a hospital. If you are a wounded soldier, you are the guest at a hospital. It's clear. Okay? Military base, police headquarters, there's another building nearby, the Chongnok Yongchalso. They belong to the Kshatriya group. They maintain law and order as they did before Chogyesa just this afternoon. Okay. Police. It was really small, only two busloads of police, not so many. Sometimes when I stayed here in Korea, near this Insadong street, 12 buses, because there was something really big going on near the Chonghwade, so they blocked off all the streets, etc. So when the Brahmins, they ring the bell, the alarm bell, the politicians, then they come. Say, okay, we maintain law and order. Okay? So where do the Vaishyas gather? Stock exchange. That's their safe house, okay? That's your Kospi, Nasdaq, whatever. And also various financial institutions. You know all of them. For instance, banks. Banks. It's their stronghold. That's where the money is. Somebody says, actually to a criminal, he was asked, why do you rob banks? Why? Because that's where the money is. Okay? Banks. And then we have our workers, very, very important. Where do they gather? Factories. Land, the farmers, or cooperatives. In Korea, the cooperatives are very strong. I saw it once. This you will know it in Korean. I won't. When all the landowners, they gathered, and there was some really serious land registration, and they solemnly, they stood up and in unison they recited something. They said something really strong, and they wanted something with the rice fields. And I didn't understand Korean even as much as I do now, which is not much, but they were really strong about protecting land and staying in their own farmer's way as they are, okay? So this is not difficult to observe. The real difficulty is how do we function in our own group, in our own social, position to help them, to help the others. Now that's an important point. You cannot say, I don't like this, I don't like that, this is out, that is in, because it's like chopping off part of your body. Think of human society as a whole body. And then if the nose doesn't like the mouth, you can't eat. If the stomach doesn't like the hands, you can't work, etc. So every single human being in a given society has a job. So what is your job? We have to find that. And last but not least, what is the place for criminals? Prison, jail. Now, all these institutions, they have an interesting function, a specific function. Well, I would like to outline about 3 of them, because that kind of has some parallels. One, of course, the monastery. The other, you will be surprised, is prison. And the third one, you may think, many, but I'm outlining hospital. Because in relation to your body and mind, these 3 are very, very specific. For instance, you come to the monastery totally out of your free will to attain liberation. They take you to prison completely against your will to liberate society from you. Okay? Because you say in a monastery that you don't need society. In prison, society said, we don't need you. Hospitals are interesting because you don't want to be there, but you realize that you have to be there. Society may want you, but if you're sick, you cannot go and do your job. Okay? So these three have various levels of attachment. Prison, total suffering, attachment to everything. Monastery, no suffering, not attached to anything. And in hospital, you are still attached to your sickness, but you want to become healthy. Okay? So that's why these are the typical representatives of air, fire, and earth, sattva, rajas, and tamas, because here you burn with some kind of fire, you want something. Here you don't want anything. And here they block whatever you want. Okay? So that's like an X-ray of society. Now, remember please the last Dharma talk when I said we have an alaya, we have a storehouse consciousness which stores everything. Whatever you are identified with in your storehouse consciousness, that takes you to a certain group and you find yourself in a certain institution. So if somebody has military mind, they find themselves in an army base. So look where you got in your adult life, where you wanted to go, or you just got taken to, and that's your group karma. Not what you think, but where you are and what you do. Okay? So what's really important as an individual, find your job, find your group, and try to help the other groups and the other individuals by truly attaining and understanding who you are, what you truly are. Because like I said, the day before yesterday, you are not the 8 consciousnesses, but you use all of them. You are the owner, you are the master of that. Likewise, don't identify with your group. Just see that your karma has taken you there. And try to use that karma correctly. But for that, we have to have some insight. Now, having an insight into the nature of existence, life and death, and our true nature as Buddha nature is very useful, but if we take it to a group level, we get some interesting historical, facts. In the Tang Dynasty, China, which lasted about 400 years, in the second half of the first millennium, that's where most of our Chinese Zen masters are from, including Bodhidharma, Huang Po, Hui Neng, Lin Chi, everyone except maybe Ta Hui, who is from Sung Dynasty, Dehe Sunim, they are from this period. Why? How could we get such a good, vintage? There were tons of monks and nuns, because there were rulers, very enlightened rulers in the Kshatriya realm, emperors who were closer to Brahmins, who are typically not warriors, typically not external but internal power. So remember the dialogue between Emperor Wu and Bodhidharma. Now consider Emperor Wu's merits, because he actually established a lot of monasteries, supported a lot of monks, etc. And of course he gained merit. But when he asked Bodhidharma, how much merit did I get? Then Bodhidharma said, no merit. Okay? That was pretty tough. But Bodhidharma was here, not here, and not here. Sutra monks, they are here. So, the problem with the Tang Dynasty golden age was that it was working too well. Over 10% of society became monk and nun. Over 10%. Now imagine that you want to wage a war, but society is so peaceful that nobody wants to go to war. Or you want to boost commerce, but people don't want to give and take so much. Enough money. And they work, it's fine. But for the kshatriya, for the warrior, for the ruler, it's an uneasy feeling that they don't have a job. There's nothing to control. There's no one to fight. So what was really sad and interesting, that the last Tang Dynasty ruler made a cultural revolution, you know, and they closed over 18,000 monasteries and sent home over 800,000 monks and nuns. And it was actually such a bad action that the dynasty died out. So it's really interesting how these groups affect each other just by their sheer massive volume. Okay? Now, we are living in an age where you might say money controls society. It's not a view, it's not a religion, it's not something that people think, but it's people that they can get, something that people can get. So here you can see an interesting correlation, because the kshatriya is supposed to have some higher world view from the Brahmin and govern the rest of it, and including itself, based on that higher view, moral, ethics, some kind of correct image of human beings' job on this earth. And we don't have that. That's why, great teachers say today's society has no direction, because this one became irrelevant. Whatever they think, whatever they say, we don't listen. We listen to cash. We listen to money, we listen to profit. So actually, what happened is Vaishya started to control the kshatriya. Look at recent wars. They are not motivated by the old classical, reasons that the kshatriya wants to control. Now, we want money through wars. We want profit through wars. Okay? And of course, in the old days, there were motivations to do that too, and there were implications, financial and agriculture and other implications. But specifically in the last 10, 15 years, we could see wars generated by businessmen. When they start to control the soldiers, and politicians, they just move their mouth and nobody listens. Other intellectuals, sociologists, etc., very, very, very remote. Okay? So this is a serious problem. Like I said earlier, when the Shudras controlled the Kshatriyas, that was communism. But actually it was part of the Brahmins that actually got corrupted enough to presume that they represent Shudras. They did not. They represented their own selfish interests. And they cut the Vaishyas because they were dangerous. Because they had the material power, and whereas they had just only talk, ideology this big. Okay? And it didn't work, so it collapsed. So that's the current situation. And why spiritual practice is so important? Because we have to give proper function to the Brahmin group, so that what we say, what we think would be relevant, that we would not understand only ourselves, that we would understand, not only ourselves, but we would understand the entire society, how it works. Okay? And when we do that, suddenly our thoughts are helpful. Our insights are valid. And that can help, bring society through this crisis, because you see that we are in a pretty critical situation. The Vaishyas, the business people, they also have a pretty strong control over Shudras. That's why we have the trade unions. But by now, what we are actually experiencing is this immense effect on the environment that we have. So all of us, whether in jail or in a monastery or in any other institution in between, we are on Mother Earth. We are on planet Earth. And because here everything turns into money, we start to turn trees, seawater, ice, climatic, balance into money. But you can't eat money. You can't breathe money, and you cannot drink money. And that's the problem. So here the blindness in the Vaishya, in the business group, is that they always want to be richer, richer, richer. Here is that they want to be always more and more powerful. Here they always want to be more and more clever. Okay? And here they just want to work more and more and more. Okay? So that's what we call the exaggeration, the crossing the natural boundary. And then things get out of balance. And actually the Sanskrit word for suffering is dukkha. Literally it means out of place, when the axle is not in the wheel. And the opposite is sukha, which is harmony or oneness, literally means in place, when the wheel is in place. So it's really easy to apply here. So if you look at society, you can discard all the ideologies, all these big, thoughts. Look at it, how it functions. What kind of, groups or energy concentrations there are, And then you will see how you can support it, what you can do to help, and then your practice will become useful not just at an individual level, but and at the family level also, but also at a social level. Okay? So that's where I would like to close the introductory and listen to your questions.